Subscribe to the Global War Archive now and share this channel with anyone serious about history, conflict and survival. Because what you're about to hear is not recycled prepper theory or romantic medieval myth. This is hard-earned knowledge pulled from centuries where survival was not a hobby but a daily, brutal requirement. If you care about how people actually endured famine, war, disease, and total system collapse, stay with me, because medieval people solve problems most modern preppers still misunderstand. For most people, medieval survival sounds primitive. That assumption is exactly why these techniques matter. Medieval communities lived without centralized supply chains, refrigeration, antibiotics, or modern infrastructure. Yet entire regions survived generations of instability. They didn't do it with gadgets, they did it with systems, habits, and local intelligence that modern survival culture often ignores. Why medieval survival was about systems, not gear. Medieval survival thinking focused on continuity, not short-term crisis response. People expected disruption as a normal condition. War, failed harvests, raids and disease were, kind of cyclical, so survival methods were designed to work quietly over years, not just days. Modern prepping often fixates on stockpiles, but medieval survival focused on processes you could maintain indefinitely, really, with minimal inputs. The first forgotten technique was rotational scarcity management. Medieval households rarely consumed their best food first. Instead, grain, meat, and preserved goods were deliberately rotated so the least desirable calories were eaten early, saving dense, durable food for a true emergency. This wasn't guesswork. Manorial records and estate accounts actually show controlled consumption schedules tied to seasons and risk. A modern prepper can apply this by deliberately training their household to live periodically on lower-calorie, simpler food while reserving core supplies untouched. This conditions both body and mindset for real scarcity. So let's talk about how medieval people managed to preserve calories without just relying on salt all the time. Salt, you see, was incredibly valuable and sometimes pretty scarce, so folks in the Middle Ages leaned heavily on other techniques like dehydration, fermentation, and, well, a combination of smoke curing. Meat, for example, was often just lightly salted and then dried near hearths, where a steady, low smoke would help keep insects and bacteria at bay. Now, when it came to fish, they were actually wind-dried in shaded airflow instead of being left out in the sun, which could easily spoil them. And vegetables, those were lacto-fermented in big wooden tubs, using the natural bacteria in the environment. Honestly, what this means for us today is that learning these low-tech preservation skills, ones that don't depend on freezers or electricity, is still incredibly useful. Building a simple smoke box out of scrap wood fermenting cabbage or root vegetables in ceramic or glass jars and air-drying thin strips of meat in a well-controlled airflow, all of these things actually recreate methods that have been proven over centuries. And, these approaches scale quietly, so they don't draw attention to your stores in the way modern stockpiles often do. Oh, why, you might wonder. Did medieval water security matter even more than food? Well, medieval people knew all too well that water could kill much faster than hunger ever could. That's why wells were such protected assets. They were often guarded, covered, and even legally controlled. Communities deliberately diversified their water sources, you see. Rainwater cisterns, natural springs, and shallow wells would all exist side by side, because any single source could be poisoned, contaminated, or, in times of conflict, cut off entirely. These days it's common for modern preppers to store water, but, honestly, they often overlook the importance of water infrastructure itself. A medieval mindset means you've got to learn to maintain multiple collection methods, understand how groundwater moves, and, crucially, protect your sources from contamination. Believe it or not, simple gravel and charcoal filtration, followed by boiling, was standard practice long before anyone had heard of germ theory. Now let's talk about how medieval people hid resources right in plain sight. One of the least discussed survival techniques was something called dispersed storage. For example, grain pits were buried outside of living spaces, lined with clay, ash, or straw, and then sealed up tight to keep out moisture and pests. These pits could actually preserve grain for years, and what's more, they were nearly invisible to any would-be raiders. This principle matters now. Centralized storage invites loss. Medieval people accepted slower access in exchange for resilience. Modern equivalents include spreading supplies across multiple concealed locations, rotating caches, and avoiding obvious stockpile signals. This approach reduces total loss during theft or disaster. Why medieval medicine focused on prevention, not treatment? Medieval survival medicine emphasized avoiding illness rather than curing it. Cleanliness, seasonal diets, controlled exposure to cold, and herbal knowledge were part of daily routine. During outbreaks like the Black Death, communities that isolated early, controlled movement, and maintained hygiene survived at higher rates. Today, this translates into prioritizing sanitation, waste control, ventilation, and immune resilience over relying solely on pharmaceuticals. Learning basic herbal antiseptics, wound care, and infection prevention aligns directly with medieval practice, stripped of superstition and applied with modern understanding. In medieval times, survival was truly communal. You see, children were taught food preservation from a very early age, while elders played a crucial role in preserving knowledge, passing down much more than just stories. Skills were shared continuously throughout the community, never hoarded by just one person. This approach created redundancy, so if one person happened to die, well, the knowledge and skills still survived. Modern prepping, often isolates skills to individuals, but applying medieval logic means deliberately teaching others, documenting processes, and actually practicing them together. Survival, well, it fails when it depends on just one expert. That's why medieval resilience came from adapting, not hoarding. Medieval people accepted loss as honestly inevitable. Fields failed. Livestock died. The response was adaptation, not panic. Mixed agriculture, trade relationships, and skill diversity, these mattered more than surplus alone. Communities that could pivot, they survived. Modern survival planning really benefits from this mindset shift. Skills, adaptability, and local cooperation matter more than perfect gear. Learning to repair, improvise, and trade skills quietly is, in fact, medieval survival thinking at its core. These techniques aren't just nostalgic, they're proven under conditions far harsher than most people can imagine. Medieval survival wasn't primitive, it was brutally efficient. If this changed how you think about survival and history, go ahead and subscribe to Global War Archive. Share this video with someone who still thinks survival is just about gadgets. And stay with us as we continue uncovering the hard truths buried beneath centuries of conflict and endurance.